Some people said, my father, Genaro V. Ong Jr., should have been a philosopher rather than a communicator. That's probably because Gen, as his friends called him, always kept a low profile. He was the proverbial Mr. Cool, always cheerful, friendly, and accommodating. He would betray his passions though. When talk turned to the social ills, he spent a lifetime fighting. Poverty, ignorance, injustice. Gen Ong was born in June 1931. He had a well-rounded education. If he were alive today, he'd cheer for the top 3 teams in the Collegiate Basketball League. He graduated high school with honors from Salle in 1949. In 1952, he earned his bachelor's degree in philosophy from the U.S.T. And to pursue a master's degree, he went to the Ateneo de Manila. Fresh from college, Gen Ong worked as a reporter for the Sentinel, the Philippines' leading Catholic newspaper. He specialized in labor and social problems, and later he would become editor and assistant publisher. It was at the Sentinel that Gen Ong met Father Cornelio Lagerway. The Dutch missionary convinced my father that using media to help the poor and the marginalized was a worthwhile cause. He left the Sentinel to help Father Lagerway launch the Philippine edition of the Catholic Digest. They were the odd couple. Gen Ong was the calm eye to Lagerway's storm. Father Lagerway was the sail that pushed the ship fast forward. Gen Ong was the rudder that kept it steady and on course.
Gen Ong was a very mild-mannered, soft-spoken boss. He was very easy to work with, but that was about the only thing that was mild about him, his way of speaking. But when it came to the work that had to be done, there it was crystal clear, and it was always passionate and intense. I guess he and Father Lagerway were both that way about the work that we had to do in SEC and CFA. We took the tack of going into mass media projects. We were the first to go into a responsible parenthood program, full program in the country. We were the ones who were daring enough to do it and blaze our trail.
When I was assigned editor of Ang Tao, my first task was to change the format, the design, and the contents of the magazine. In effect, only the name Ang Tao remained. When the magazine came out, we showed it to Mr. Ong. He took a good look at it, and then with his irrepressible smile, he said, "It's very different." Mr. Ong smiled, so I knew we did a good job.
SEC's use of media to highlight the plight of the poor and promote social change earned for both Gen Ong and Father Lagerway an invitation to Marcos's jail when martial law was declared in 1972. Upon release from detention, the two began mapping plans for a new organization. In 1973, this would become the Communication Foundation for Asia. The target issues remained the same: poverty, ignorance, injustice. But this time, the approach was more constructive, and the goal was total human development. Gen Ong still believed that the poor needed to be empowered, and the key to their development was education. CFA's work, he said, was an educational process aimed at developing social consciousness, personal responsibility towards one's fellow men, one's community, and country. In other words, a social conscience. Education is the key, communication is the tool. He called this development communication, or Devcom, a term later appropriated by others. Development communication, Ong said, should seek to elicit a human and ultimately a social response in the people whom it seeks to serve. Serve, not mold or manipulate, as if people were putty in the hands of the communicator. In 1978, death cut short the work of this gentle giant, but his concept of development communication lives on in the products and services that CFA continues to turn out.
I first joined CFA as head of radio, TV, film in 1973. So I had the privilege of working with Mr. Ong for 5 years before he passed away. At that time, CFA was known as the SEC Development and Research Foundation, and we were supposed to be a small think tank coming up with new project ideas. But even then, the ideas were big. We were producing a daily radio drama series on social reform and planning a weekly TV series on values. We were also preparing the production of a full-length movie on responsible parenthood entitled Batingao. The vision of Father Lagerway, Mr. Ong, and other top executives such as Lulu Vertusio and D.M. Maglalang was to have a center which would not only continue to produce innovative Devcom materials, but also train people, particularly those with multiplier effect, such as teachers, community workers, NGO and church personnel, in the use of group media and in the production of their own alternative media, so that they would have their own voice.
When I first joined CFA as head of finance and administration in 1978, Genong was the managing director and my MSc confer Father Cornelio Lagerway was the executive vice president. I was attracted to CFA's mission, which was to serve God through media. The goal was, and still is, total human development. Today, the biggest part of CFA's media ministry is its publications. This ministry has its roots from the earliest days of CFA. Genong wrote one of the first articles on the use of comics for evangelization. Even then, he foresaw that CFA needed to compete with the mass media, so that we had to make education entertaining and entertainment educational. He also said that if our media products aim to impart values, we should remember that values are caught, not taught.
My father was full of faith in his work, in the people he worked with, and in the people who were the objects of his work. By faith, says the Bible, he still speaks even though he is dead. Although a man of few words when he was alive, he speaks more eloquently today. Genaro V speaks through his pioneering work, which lives on in the Communication Foundation for Asia, and through you, who share his vision and passion.